Kia ora, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Human Podcast. My name's Amanda, and today I'm talking to Rachael Ewing, who is the kaitiaki of Ipawi Farm up north in Aotearoa, New Zealand. She lives there with her husband, her mother, her father, her children, her brother, and her sister. They all have little dwellings on the farm up there. I wanted to connect with Rachael because, well, we came across each other on Instagram and they practice biodynamics on their farm up there. She's also a Steiner teacher. She has quite an interesting spiritual perspective. And I thought it would be nice to connect with her. So we end up talking about her upbringing. She was born in New Hampshire in America and how she came to live in New Zealand. We talk about her shamanic spiritual practices and how that kind of has influenced her life. We talk about her time at Taruna, which is the Steiner training place in New Zealand, but also they do other training too. So I will put their details in the show notes because they do lots of workshops and other things worth checking out. Then the second part of the podcast, we go more into her work with biodynamics and permaculture. And if you're new to biodynamics or permaculture or just land stewardship and stuff, I really recommend you listen to all of that because she's got lots of great tips on near the end on how to get started with all of this. But she's also just really knowledgeable, and the way that she talks about it all just it gets me really enthusiastic and excited to go out into my garden and work with the plants and the earth and really just be here and nourish my little bit of the planet. So it's an all-round really awesome talk about magical, mystical, practical, interesting things. I'll put all her contact details in the show notes. She's on Instagram and they have a little website. If you want to support this podcast, then you can go to my Buy Me a Coffee page and you can become a producer of a show, or you can just buy me a coffee and all proceeds go towards the running costs of the podcast, the web hosting and the internet bill and all that stuff. And a free way to support the show is by liking, subscribing, and sharing. So please do that because word of mouth is how this podcast is getting more and more reach. So thanks to all of you that have shared with your friends. Keep it up. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I really enjoyed the convo. Get in touch and leave a comment if you feel called to do so. Also, please let me know if there's somebody that you want me to interview or get in touch with, because I'm always looking for new people to chat to. That might even be you. Anywho, enjoy. So, kia ora and welcome to Rachael. I wonder if maybe we can start with a little intro.
Definitely. Yep.
Hello, please.
Hi. So I'm out here in Takahui, New Zealand, and obviously from my accent, I'm from the United States originally, from New Hampshire. That's where I was born, and living in Massachusetts on a little island off the coast of Massachusetts called Martha's Vineyard, and it's a little island in the Atlantic Ocean.
Fancy.
And that's where my husband is from, and that's where my other home is, really. But we are here now, and because of the current state of the world, we have decided to remain here in New Zealand for as long as we see fit, especially for our wee ones. It's been challenging for my husband, but that's a whole other story because his family is there and my family is here.
Right.
So that's kind of how it works. So this farm is called Ipawi Farm, and Ipawi literally means bowl of water, and that's or a gourd, a carrying vessel of water. And that's really what we see this place as. We are nestled in the bush. We're at the foot of the Mungamuka Mountains in the far north, just south of Kaitaia. And yeah, we're just surrounded by bush, and we're at the headwaters, so we don't have anybody above us, no humans, only animals, and possums and birds, no livestock either, just the bush. And it's perma water, so it's running right out of the earth right to us. So that's really why we feel so fortunate and grateful to be on this land. And yeah, we've been here for about 6 years, and yeah, and so there are lots of questions and lots of roads we could go down around that. But for me personally, yeah, I'm Rachael Ewing, and my ancestry goes back to Ireland and France, but I was born in America. And also I have Native American ancestors, which are, the first people of Canada. Born in New Hampshire, and then now kind of back and forth from the United States and New Zealand, and feeling very much rooted in New Zealand in this moment. Yeah, and my interests, I love farming and gardening. My children are the biggest part of my life right now. They're all very small. I have a 9-month-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Wow.
And yeah, and then I'm a crafter. I felt and I weave and I sew and I knit. I love to walk, and I love to swim. I love to surf. I love the ocean. Yeah, I mean, I just really love being a human and being in my body. I guess that's the biggest part of it. Yeah. So
it's a good interest to have.
Is that a good intro?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I only really know of Martha's. The first time I heard about Martha's Vineyard was watching Gilmore Girls when I was a teenager. Her grandparents wanted to go and have a batch on Martha's Vineyard, and I was like, oh, okay. So were you on kind of like a big piece of land with your family when you lived there? What kind of?
Well, so I was born in New Hampshire, which is just like 6 hours north of Martha's Vineyard. And we would always go to the island to visit in summer. My parents lived there before I was born. So I was actually conceived there, and then they moved to New Hampshire. And so, yeah, we would always come there. And then as soon as I was always an ocean person more than a mountain person. So as soon as I had a choice, I moved there. And the place where my husband was born, it's a small, tiny little piece of land, probably about 4 acres, but very compact and very well used. So extensive gardens, chickens, ducks, like a pretty big area that we're converting into a food forest and food production. We have quite a large house that's still on the grid, and we're working on trying to move it off the grid.
In Martha's Vineyard, you mean?
Yeah, in Martha's Vineyard. So it's kind of in the works, but it's a very small piece of land. There, and pretty urban. So it's very different.
Yeah, interesting. So what brought you over here? I didn't realize you were all American.
Yeah, we are all American.
Because you're here with your mother as well, aren't you?
Yeah, my mother's American. Yep. And she what happened was I came, to travel. My brothers both, I have 2 brothers, and they both came to travel, and we just fell in love with this country, as you do. And, we were just working all around on the organic farms. And then we would come back and tell my parents about it, and they just started to fall in love with it from afar. And then I came to do my Steiner training at Taruna, and my mother said, well, I'll just bring you to school. I was like, okay, well, it's across the world, but I guess so. And so she literally did. We flew together, and we rented a van, and she drove me to Taruna.
It's so cute.
And dropped me off. And then she came home. She went back to New Hampshire for a little bit, but she really stayed, and she played the midwife card and came to New Zealand on that. And so my mother and father both have residency and are, able to get citizenship this year. So they are here. Yeah. Yep. Oh. And then my brother and his wife and their 2 children are almost have their residency now too.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so you all bought, is it Ipawi?
Ipawi, yep. Ipuwai, Ipawi.
And so you've bought that together as a family, have you?
That's right.
Yeah, right. And do you all have
Yeah.
separate houses, or are you living?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very communal.
Mm,
We all actually get along very well, and that's, the big reason why we chose to live together. It's
yeah,
helpful that you actually
yeah.
like to be with each other. I know that we're fortunate in that, and I know that it's challenging sometimes to live with your family.
Mm.
But yeah, my husband and I and my three children live in two yurts and a kitchen. They're all separate
Oh,
buildings, so you have to be outside to go to each one, but they are all, warm. And yeah, so we have two little yurts and a kitchen, and that's kind of up at the top of the hill. My
mm.
other brother, Trevor, has a cabin way up in the bush that he's built. And then my other brother, Sean, has a cabin that's kind of more down at the beginning of the driveway. And I'm in my parents' house right now. It's a big, massive kind of pole barn outdoor structure, but also has a little funky wooden cabin kind of on the side of it that is insulated
That's so
with a
cool.
wet back and a range. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's like the dream way to
Yeah.
live. I live with my mother and my
Oh,
son.
good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. But we kind of like, I love the idea of what you're doing in terms of that's kind of
Yeah.
like our end goal is to have a piece of land where we have our own houses. I think that's really important. And as much as I love my mother, and
Mm.
she'd agree, it'll be nice for us to have our own kitchens, and all that,
Yeah.
our own
Yeah,
space.
no, it is helpful, definitely. I think it's helpful to maintain those healthy relationships. You really want to have space designated for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
totally. And I've
Yeah,
actually been
so
looking
yeah.
at the at yurts. How noise
Mm.
proof are they?
They're
If you
totally like
insulate
living
them?
in a tent, not noise proof whatsoever. You can hear everything.
Huh. Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought about that because I'm super sensitive to noise. And I was like, oh, if I lived in a yurt and then there was someone slightly noisy around me, that would irritate
Yeah.
me. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're so far out here, we hear
Mm,
airplanes sometimes, and we have one neighbor that can kind of go past us, and he's one of our dear friends, but that's all we can really hear. And,
that's
the more
real.
points and the wind and things. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So do you feel
Mhm.
like you want to be in the yurts like long term, or do you have a vision of doing something slightly different?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we're at such a time of not knowing right now that I just guess I just don't even really think about that much these
Mm,
days. I just
yeah,
try to think about the moment. We
yeah.
have a really large house that feels very cumbersome to me.
Mm,
That's what we have it back in the States, and it's not something that I ever thought I would really have, was like a big place that I own. I never
mm,
really wanted to own anything. So the yurts feel really good in that sense. It's like impermanent, movable, changeable. You're outside, you're essentially living outside, and that's really what I have always wanted for me and my children. But it is challenging,
mm.
definitely, in the winter when it's wet and the mud is up to your knees and you're having to walk to your kitchen and your outside toilet and things like that. So in those moments, I do dream of a beautiful earth house on the hill that's like
Yeah,
warm and
yeah.
all self-contained. And that is definitely something that my husband and I have dreamed about. And we have the perfect little place picked out on the land and things like that. But yeah, it feels kind of very far in the future at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. Mm.
Hey, I wondered, I mean, you've kind of mentioned where you grew up.
Mm.
Was there anything you wanted to add about what your childhood and early adult life was like?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, because it is very much who I am. I mean, I'm sure it is very much who we all are. Early childhood, we know, that those first 3 years, and then really those first 7 years are everything
Mm,
for our, who we are. And of course, we can overcome things that happen, but it really does shape us, I believe. And so, yeah, I was very fortunate. I grew up in the mountains of New Hampshire, pristine, beautiful, just the granite peaks, deep in the forest with hundreds of acres behind us of protected forest. And I grew up in an old, rambling kind of farm style house that was way out down a long dirt road. And we could just do whatever we wanted. We just
mm,
were set free. And I have two brothers, so we already had a little tribe. And then we lived right next to my two sets of cousins.
mhm.
Um, So then we had, Sidra and Saul and Tyson and Riston. So we really had a tribe of, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 children that I was the eldest, and we could just really go wherever we like. And our parents were very free with us and trusting. And of course, we got into trouble sometimes, but mostly we just were up to good adventures. And so that was very helpful and formative, I think, for me. And my schooling was very free as well. I went to an alternative school that was, this woman, Nancy Koval, I still am in communication with her. She's one of my just great heroes. It was called the Bear Camp Valley School, and it was tiny, and it was very, she drew from she drew from Montessori and Steiner and many different philosophies, and just kind of came up with what was right for her in the moment for the children. And it was, I think her big focus was relationships in her schooling. And that I think is so special. And and patterns and nature based, and we had outdoor school for 4 months of the year. And, it was just really open and free. So I guess that was that. And, my mom was a midwife, is a midwife, and my father does green building and eco building, and we ate really good food. We always had our own garden. My brothers and I have a really beautiful relationship, really deep friendship and love. It was a very loving, just abundant childhood.
Yay.
Yeah.
What we kind of want for all our children, really. That
exactly. Yes. Yeah.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So that probably influenced the spiritual path you walk, I imagine. I mean, definitely. As childhood does.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable explaining a little bit of what that looks like for you?
Yes. Yeah. As far as I feel like my spirituality is very rooted in nature. Mm-hmm. And just I'd say it's almost, I guess, for a lack of a better word, a lot of pagan, I would say, just really rooted in the seasons. Where I grew up, it was very, very designated seasons. Like you had autumn, it was very much autumn. You had winter, and it was deep snow 6 feet up, over your window. Mm-hmm. And then you had spring, which was snow melting, mud season, blooming trees. And then you had summer, which was hot and kind of oppressive. So it was like very much, I feel like that really shaped who I was and my spirituality. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I'm always looking to the seasons and the earth for guidance and really just everything. I think that really, I'm just looking out and the wind's blowing, the punga ferns, and, it's kind of stormy, and that is, my place of prayer, or my, my church is out there. And for, I think biodynamics is, and, anthroposophical education and farming and medicine is really all about that. And these kind of mimicking these natural systems that are already existing and looking to them, for guidance. And when I was little, I guess like it started, because my mom was big into gardening, and so was my dad. And they would always just like make funky little teas and things like that in the garden, and comfrey tea and fish emulsion, or, whatever. And so I think that's where my love for kind of like potions and preparations kind of started and spurred. But my path also of spirituality kind of went down a road of, shamanism and looking kind of into the yogic and the Buddha kind of philosophies as well. So that's a path where I've drawn a lot of inspiration and influence from. I lived in a shamanic community for a long time when I was at university. I also lived in a yurt there and did my shamanic training, and I think that I still kind of go back to that when I need guidance or help. So that's been a real kind of like foundation for me. But I guess, I don't know if you have any more prompts. I've kind of
well, I mean, what was the shaman? What kind of, was there a tradition in the shaman?
Shamanism is I guess everyone can be traced back to a shaman.
Yeah.
Everybody's ancestor can be traced back to that.
Yeah.
So it's really just this practice of communing with nature, but maybe in through plant spirit or through animal medicine. Or so I mean, when I was doing my training, we did it, this man named Michael Harner, he kind of came up with, because a lot of shamans would use plant medicine as in like, a hallucinogenic to kind of get them to this place in their mind where they could commune with what they were searching for, And so Michael Harner I think it was the 70s said, well, hallucinogenics aren't very accepted in our culture right now. So let's find another way to get our brain to that place. And so he found the drum beat, and it was 7 beats per second on like a buffalo drum or a bone drum. They're like one-sided kind of, and you just beat the drum, and it literally you kind of go into a hypnotic state, and and you can kind of access more of that left brain thinking, more of that creative kind of spiritual realm, and you can ask questions and get to all kinds of really amazing places that you might not get to with your intellect. I guess it's about shutting down that intellect mind, which is so awake and aware right now in this time. So does that answer your question kind of?
Yeah.
I mean, so
I'm always, I'm interested in the shamanic path personally.
Yes.
I'm fine. Like, I think it's cool that when people can use hallucinogens for their own practice, but I always find myself every time I've kind of come to go there, I'm like, there's always something that's like, not for me.
Totally.
And it's not fear-based or anything, but it's interesting to hear about a shamanic path that actually doesn't rely on hallucinogens. It relies on you staying. I think there's just something about, I don't know, us kind of training our physicality to consciously do the work to get to that state. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's something valuable in actually having to work quite hard to get there. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, I definitely no shade on anybody that does ayahuasca and stuff, because I know that everybody's got their own personal path. But I'm just interested to hear that there are shamanic paths you can walk down that don't involve hallucinogens. So is that something is it widely known that his practices?
Yes, it's very influential. Michael Harner, is that what you?
Does it have a name like Michael Harmer?
No, I don't think it has a name. The technique, I guess it would be called the drum technique, probably. But it's Michael Harner is his name, and he's written extensive books and has recordings, and so you can totally look into it. It really appeals to me as well. I mean, I deeply believe in hallucinogenics and especially psychedelics right now in a time where I think we really need to wake up to that part of ourself. And I think it can be extremely healing. And I am completely behind all of the research right now that's going on in the States and in Canada around that. But for me personally, and especially with small children and things, the drum is just so much more accessible. And I mean, you can get your own. I mean, we have some people down the road who are making drums right now, the shamanic style drum, and you can just do it yourself. You can do it for yourself, or you can have someone drum for you. You can just lay down on the floor and someone can drum for you. And you can just, if you are willing, you can access all these other worlds in your brain. It's really cool. Yeah.
Were there any like experiences that you feel comfortable sharing that changed something in you? During those
well, see, I've used it a lot for decision making, because I think a lot of times, like, I'm speaking for myself, but I know other people feel this way. When you're trying to make a decision, your intellect can really get in the way of your heart. I would just use it. So I had some, so often when you're starting a journey, you have a means of going up or a means of going down. So there's the upper world and the lower world. And the upper world's kind of more advanced, and you want to be really prepared when you go there because it's more of this realm. The lower world is just it's all anything you want it to be. It's magical, spiritual, kind of more animal, nature kind of, so you would just have this way. So mine was a tree in the forest when I was little. You pick a place that you actually know of. And then, I could go up this vine that I used to swing on, or I could go down through the roots to the lower world. And so I had this one journey, I remember, where I can't really remember what the question was, but Oh, it was something like, I don't think it was even that big. It was like, should I, keep studying this path of, I was doing environmental studies, or should I go another way or something like that? And I just can have such a vivid memory of going on this like run. I mean, it was a sprint. I used to play soccer, football, and I would, and I also did long distance running. So running is a big part of me. And I just ran. It was like the hardest I'd ever run, but it was in my mind.
Wow.
And I was following, there was a hummingbird, and I was following it, and it just led me up to this really like massive peak of a mountain. And I saw like what it was, the decision, and I just jumped right into it and just like flew into it. And I just that vision will always be ingrained in my mind. And that's kind of a good example of how, I mean, you can go anywhere in your mind, and it's so good to remember that we are not trapped right here in this plane. We can go anywhere we like, and so
Totally.
I feel like that's what, shamanism's a really good way to be able to do that. Yeah.
It's really funny. I've been just that you talking about that reminds me of, I'm just reading work by a man called 4 Arrows, who is an Indigenous education fellow from America. I think he lives in Mexico now. But he was just talking about it. He was having a dialogue with a man called Jack Miller, who's developed a holistic curriculum program. But they were talking about using, like in Steiner schools, we use verses or sometimes slight meditations or something. But for normal schools, they would look at those kind of mind altered states or slight hypnotic states that you get into and be like, that's so weird. But 4 Arrows talks about how whenever you're doing anything, when you're learning or listening, you go into a slight hypnotic state anyway. And he's like, it's totally normal for us to be tricked by advertising and politics. Like they are doing actual hypnotic trance work.
They are the best magicians.
They are the best. And if we want our children to grow up savvy to this stuff, we also have to bring, he calls it trance work or trance states into education. And that's what Indigenous cultures do skills. Through things like drum beats or saying the same verses over and over again. And it's just like any ritual you walk into. As soon as, I mean, for me personally, if I say the Lord's Prayer, if I'm feeling scared at nighttime, instantly it's fine, or little things like that. And so it's just really nice hearing people keep talking about how your mind, it can take you anywhere, and it can do that for children too. I mean, of course, with children, it's a different kind of consciousness we're dealing with, so we have to be careful. But I love how shamanism and Indigenous culture and kind of holistic education are open to these trance states or mindfulness states of being that actually help learning and self-discovery, which is
definitely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. It's nice. It's good to look at it on that platform, because it's we have to, it is at this time, especially more than ever, a good time to, guide your children in developing these skills, because they are, we have to really hone these skills and keep them close, because they are our greatest ally. Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And without them, we're quite easily duped. Not to be alarmist, but good for us to be developing.
With you on that one.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. That's really special.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Did you have anything else to say on that topic before we move on?
No, I think that was really a nice, and how you added the education aspect of it really brought it full circle.
Cool. So this kind of leads us to the next 2 questions kind of are connected for me. But anyway, I noticed you led me to your other page, the mother and child connection. And that's something you set up with your mother. Could you tell us about that? And is it something you might pick up when your kids get older again?
Yeah, definitely. So my mom, as I said, is a midwife, and I am, trained Steiner teacher. Also have some, parent coaching skills, kind of sleep coach skills or sleep guidance. puppetry. I do a lot of puppetry, and so I have a lot of like puppetry kind of stuff going on. And so I felt like so it's kind of like mom has the like birth thing, and she has so much other knowledge. I mean, she was a nurse forever, and she has her certification in homeopathy, and she just has so much knowledge and so much care to give. And then, I really feel passionate about these kind of birth to 7 or birth to 3 years. And so, we have a lot of people who come to us, just friends really, and then friends recommend friends, and we just have a lot of people who want to talk with us and together kind of, and because of our skill set. And so we're like, you know what, and of course we chose to do it right when I was having my second child. Let's just set up this website and this framework, and it can just be there. And then, it can just be there, and it can, if you feel like putting up an article, or if you have the time, or you want to do a post, it can just be there to do that. And, maybe someday we'll have a little Etsy shop on there, or maybe someday we'll have, we've gone on all different kinds of, tangents in our minds. But we just really wanted to offer our skills, and we put it out as like a coaching thing, but we don't even know if that is, if that is really what it should be. We're very open to it changing and morphing, but we know that we like to work together. And when I was going back and forth from the States, it was a way of us to kind of work together when I was away, and, work on articles together, because we like to collaborate, and we love to write together and things like that. So I guess what really happened is we were thinking about it, and then all of a sudden, I think it was in my inbox or on my Instagram or somewhere, the Natural Parent magazine, a little note just came in and was like, we'd love to offer you an ad in our something. And I was like, it was like you get those signs, and you're not sure, like sometimes is it a sign or shit? And I was like, it's a sign, so I'm just going to do it. And so that's what spurred the whole thing. And then we had an ad in Natural Parent magazine, and we got a little bit of business, but it was just kind of felt a little overwhelming with the farm and the children and our other loves. So it's there, and we still feel extremely passionate about it. And I've had probably maybe 3 or 4 actual like business phone call consultations that were amazing and wonderful. And then, I have probably 3 or 4 or maybe 5 friends who I talk to regularly, and kind of like a coaching style around all different kinds of things. So it is part of my life, but maybe not at the forefront in the moment.
Yeah. While you're still, especially while you're still breastfeeding and stuff, you need all that energy.
Yeah.
But, are you feeling like it will just kind of just keep pottering along, and you might?
And then maybe someday it'll become something big, and it'll be, I'm doing it right now, and I will continue to homeschool my children. So, that's a full-time job, so I won't go back to teaching, I don't think. And we have a homeschool cooperative here in New Zealand, and we have one in the States too. So my children are socialized, but homeschooled. So I am teaching, I guess, in that sense when I'm in those groups. But it feels like maybe this is more of like a work realm for me than actual teaching. So where I could homeschool, but also have this as like a job, I guess, and maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, cool. You got to keep these things open.
That's right. Just keep all the doors open.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you went to Taruna, and for those who don't know, that's like a Steiner education training hub, but they also do like arts therapy courses and art training and speech work, and all kinds of anthroposophical wonderfulness happens at Taruna. So what training did you do there, and why did you choose Taruna to do it at?
So they also have the biodynamic training too there. I think they still offer it. So Taruna, so it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to do a quick story. I was traveling around, and I was working. So when I came to travel in New Zealand for the first time, I was having kind of one of those moments where I wasn't quite sure the path. And so I came here and I was really thinking I wanted to go into education. I had been doing my environmental studies and, creative, pretty much visual arts. That's what I had been studying. And then I kind of stopped and came here to just have some time. And I became very good friends with this woman, Zoe. Her last name at the time was Villiana, but now she's Zoe Shore. And she went through, Taikura, the Rudolf Steiner School in Hastings. She went through class 12. So she was one of those wonderful people that you come across sometimes that have just been immersed in Waldorf education or Steiner education. And you're just like, wow, what a human. And so I met her at Wilderland, that intentional community farming community on up on the Coromandel Peninsula. And I was working there, and she was living there with her 2 children and her husband, and he still is big into biodynamics. Guy Villiana, he does the beekeeping mostly. I mean, he's affiliated with Harvest and things too, I'm pretty sure. Right. So he's one of my dear friends. And so I started talking to her, and I kind of lived with her, and we just loved each other. And she said to me one day, she just handed me this like old crumple up kind of old piece of paper, and like opened it up and handed it to me, and it was the pamphlet for Taruna. Oh, cool. And I had never even really I wasn't going to talk to people about my path. I just wanted to be here and be free and be away from everything, and then feel into what I wanted to do. But she was like, you should be a Steiner teacher. I was like, what? Okay. And so I took it as a sign, and I went back to America, and I really, journeyed and meditated, and it felt really right. So I did it, found a way, and came to Taruna, and I did the teacher training with a focus in early childhood. And I taught down in Motueka at the Steiner School down there for a little while. Nice. And when I finished, I went and worked at Voleda in the gardens, and I worked with Peter Proctor, and I worked with Rachael Pomeroy, and I worked with Guy Villiana at Hohepa, and nice. I just got really into biodynamics. I'm kind of probably going into another one of your questions here, but that's good. So it was like the education and the education part of it. I would recommend any human to go through that teacher training. I mean, it is life changing, because what you're doing essentially is getting rid of all of your own stuff so that you can then be with the children. I mean, it's therapy pretty much, it's just deep work. And I just loved it. I mean, it just spoke to every essence of my being. It was probably one of the best times of my life. And then it just led me to biodynamics, which, I couldn't even, I mean, I'd read about it, but I couldn't believe when I started to see it in practice with Peter Proctor. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is, I just would get like chills every time I would do something, stir a preparation, or it just felt so connected to my ancestry and like deep in my cellular memory. It was like I was waking up to one of my past lives or something, when I was, and I still have that feeling when I do it here. So yeah, I'm definitely a diehard
biodynamical person. Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's so cool. You got to work with Peter before he passed away. That's so amazing.
Yeah, he's so, I know, what a wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah. That's so awesome that it led you to biodynamics. So do you think that it almost was like, oh, I'll go be a teacher, and then suddenly it was like, oh, actually maybe I'll be a biodynamic farmer.
Well, maybe I'll be both. Yeah,
you do
well,
both.
I did teach for quite a while back in the States at a Steiner preschool kindy.
Right.
So I was the lead teacher and director there, and I got really burnt out is what happened. It was a little frontier school kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it was just, I mean, I loved it, and I love the work, and I still do, and I'm still very close with the teachers who are there now, but it was just too much for one person. And they actually, after I left, I helped them, but they kind of made a way for it to be that there was never going to be a person who would be lead teacher and director again at the same time. It's just too much on a human.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, now that role is shared. But yeah, I mean, I love to teach, and I love that, especially the early childhood side of things, just the verses and songs and the rhythm of the day and the free play. And we would garden and go for nature walks and lots of puppetry and lots of crafting. And I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, you know what I'm speaking to, but yeah, so definitely. But yeah, you know, farming feels like I can be with my children and I can farm. The teaching thing, you know, it just, if I'm going to go away from my home and teach, it doesn't feel so conducive to the parenting that I'm working towards right now. Yeah, so farming feels much more, I mean, the children just come with me and with my parents and with my husband, and we just go together, and it's their education. So
yeah, for sure. I think biodynamics and education just work, just a match made in heaven, really. The more I learn about biodynamics and the more that I'm studying about place-based education as well, on top of Steiner education and Indigenous methods of education, the more I'm just like, oh, we got to get all these Steiner schools on a farm.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
and the one in Machueka is working towards that.
They just started it, I think.
Yeah.
They just moved on this term. So
that's right. Yeah.
Leslie is writing an I think forgive me if I get her name wrong, but she's writing an article for the next issue of the magazine about the Steiner School and how they use biodynamics and stuff, which is really cool.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have a friend who had her daughters there, so I know a little bit of what's going on. And yeah, sounds like, I mean, when I was there back in 2009, I think it was, they were, you know, in their little schoolhouse downtown, and they were dreaming up that farm. So it's kind of exciting that it's coming to fruition.
So amazing. They've worked so hard. So it'd be cool to hear that story.
Yeah.
But this is kind of you've kind of just told us about how your biodynamic journey started.
Yes.
And you've told us where your farm is and who lives there. You live there with lots of extended family, which is great. And you've been there for 5 years?
6 years in August. Yep.
6 years in August. Amazing. And you kind of already answered this, but what does keep you practicing biodynamics? What keeps you doing it?
So I mean, for me, it's really the central idea of biodynamics is really that your farm or your land is a living organism. And so that is what keeps me, I think, in biodynamics, just that whole system thinking, you know, just that everything is the fields, the water, the animals, the gardens, the plants, the different species interacting, the edges, the marginals, the chicken coop, everything's just part of this living organism. So I feel like that's a big part of it. Also the kind of the working with the rhythms of the earth is a big part of it too, because I spoke to this earlier, how that is kind of my church, is nature. And so to have a kind of a system that Rudolf Steiner put out there, his intentions of biodynamic farming, it really speaks to that. Just looking, observing what's happening now, what's happening with the moon, what's happening with the season, what's happening with the temperatures, where's the wind out of, where's the sun right now, all of those connections, the moon and the sun and the stars. And that, I think, keeps me coming back for more, and biodynamics. And I also spoke of this and how I just get this like deep feeling of connecting in on a cellular level to my ancestry when I, just mix the 500, or, we don't make our own 500 right now, but whenever I buried a horn, or, or whenever I mixed up that cow poo and got it into that horn and buried it in the pit in the autumn, those kind of things, the compost preparations where you're working with all these beautiful herbs and bringing them into, kind of into this realm of the animal, and then uniting them at a certain time of the year, and to then make this gorgeous little bit of hummus that you put into your compost pile. It's just absolute magic, and it actually works. So that feels really good too. I wrote a couple things down. The other thing is Well, the whole idea of compost and soil being kind of central to the organism, and that speaks really, strongly to me and to my father and my mother, who are, avid gardeners and really do a lot here on the land. Compost, especially for my father, he's very into his compost. And so just that, we work on clay soil here, and
Right.
with clay, it's like all these amazing little nutrients are locked inside and sealed tight, and you have to do this kind of magic dance to unlock them and let the plants access what's in there. And so that's kind of, I think, biodynamics, especially with the preparations for the compost, that really works well, because you're kind of bringing in the nitrogen and the carbon and all these other kind of essentials to unlock those nutrients and all the beauty of the soil that we know lies underneath the soil, but we just have to kind of be that bridge to help the plants access it. And then so I think that was pretty much what I wanted to say about that. There's just like, there's so much in biodynamics, as you know. It's like hard to even, but I think it's that I just love working with the moon and the stars and the sun, and kind of this whole idea of that we as humans kind of stand upright, and then there's the earth down below us, and then the stars and the heavens above us, and so we are kind of this bridge between those two. And what a beautiful thought that we have that potential and that opportunity. I mean, just seems like such a wonderful way to spend your life, just bridging those two.
And that we as human beings can actually make the earth better and more full of life. We don't have to be these destructive, everyone calls us a virus, or we're doing destruction on the earth, but that we don't have to do that.
No, we don't. We can live in harmony completely.
And actually add to it. Like, we could make the world better than it would be if we weren't here, which is something I think children need to hear that a lot too, because they get this rhetoric that human beings are destroying the planet, which they are, but that's not all we are,
you don't have to go down that path. It's your choice.
And I like that you also kept saying, like, you do all these things, but it actually works. Actual evidence. There's been scientific papers. People can literally see the difference between even just organically tended to soil compared to biodynamic soil. There's a difference, and you don't necessarily always have to know how it works, but it works. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is now the science. I mean, the science is behind it, but the science is also, I think we always misuse that word, because science in its essence is ever changing and morphing. It's always moving and always just what's happening. It's never stagnant. So I think that's the beauty of also biodynamics, and creation through chaos is really at its foundation. So definitely.
Very much so. And I guess like you're saying, in terms of you looking at where the sun and the wind and all of these things are coming from, there's no set regimented routine. I was talking to Alan, the chair of the Biodynamic Association. He says what he likes about it is that he actually plays an active observational role, and it's more participatory than just following the Yates gardening guide, or which is pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, I mean, do you use any other agricultural methods as well as biodynamic?
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, we've got a lot going on here. But I have my PDC design certificate, and so I am an avid permaculturist. And I've done a little bit of teaching. My friend does a lot of teaching back in the States. She has a big farm, about 500 acres, 5th generation, on Martha's Vineyard. And so she does a little bit of teaching there, and she'll call me in sometimes to do some special things. So I really, really feel extremely passionate about permaculture as well. And I do believe that biodynamics and permaculture go hand in hand, just like biodynamics with education. Like, they are sisters. And so So we have like, we're building many food forests all over the property, and most of our gardens are, have, even though they're somewhat kind of market gardens, they do have a lot of permaculture within them. We'll do succession planting and planting interspecies things, like, so that you're planting for the future really, and mimicking what nature does, always trying to mimic what nature's doing. In her forests. And then we do a lot with, like, other than the biodynamic preparations, we use a lot of compost tea. My brother's really big into brewing compost tea. And that is just so magic. Like, because you could put your preparation 500 right into that mix, and then you're bubbling it up, and then you have your seaweed, and you have your fish emulsion, and you have a little bit of your soil that, just from your garden, and you can put some comfrey in there. You can put some nettles in there. You can just really put whatever you want in your bag. You put it in the water, and then you have a little fish tank bubbler, and it's just enlivening it constantly and just adding oxygen and waking all those little microbes up. So we're really, and we notice such a difference when you go out with your 2 watering cans and water whatever you're watering with your compost tea. It's just like, you can see the plants just waking up.
Oh, that's so cool.
And yeah, so we're really into compost tea. We do some, like, I do a lot of just like weird kind of teas around, just like nettle teas and comfrey teas and things like that, just watering little plants around here and there, kind of funny little experiments. And my daughter's really into it too, so it's really good for her. She loves just making all kinds of concoctions and things like that.
Cool.
So permaculture, and then like all our different teas and compost, compost tea is a big part of it. We've been getting really into mycorrhizal fungi and like figuring it out I was thinking about how to make like a powder to start dipping the roots of our seedlings before we plant them out. But then I've been talking with a lot of people, and they're like, that's kind of more like almost commercial. You're better off just kind of like figuring out how to get that mycorrhizal fungi just to be in your soil all the time. So we've been doing a lot of research on that and trying to figure out how to get those little funguses to be more alive in this soil. And one of the things that we've come across that Kay Baxter is super into at Kaonga is the ramial wood chips. So it's like small diameter, kind of green wood, like the Tithonia, the Mexican sunflowers are really nice for that. And those are really good pulsing plants in your permaculture garden. So you can just hack them down with your machete, and then you put them in the chipper, and then they break down. And what they do, I guess what ramial means, I guess, like it's pretty much like from what I understand, you're creating like a forest edge culture. And that's a lot where you find the fungus at the edge of the forest.
Yeah, true.
So that's where all the little deciduous trees and like all the little branches fall down, all the leaves fall down, and then you chip. And then that kind of, you put that around your trees and stuff, and you're encouraging that fungal growth, fungal and bacterial. So we're that's our new thing. My husband's super into it. So he's just been like chipping like a madman out there recently.
It's awesome.
So yeah, we've been chipping, we've been pruning. So we've been pruning all of our fruit trees to the season. So all those little tiny twigs and stuff chip really nice. We just pruned our big fig tree that we chipped up, and that just smelled really divine. And we put that around all of our trees up in our food forest by our yurts. And we've also been really working on guilds. So we kind of did a bunch of initial plantings, just trees, and they look kind of sad and they're all by themselves. And then we start to do these guilds around them, which are just, you put like pretty much your little permaculture guild around it. So it's all your different layers, but you plant them at once. So you can plant like your low layer, kind of like herbaceous layer, which is your comfrey, and your, like you could even put other herbs like oregano and rosemary and things like that in there. And then you can do your other layer, which are like little shrubs like mulberries or currants or blackberries or raspberries or things like that. And then you can do another layer, which is kind of like your Mexican sunflower, and we have some nicotiana that we put in there. And then, you know, you could put, we put a lot of kumara at the bottom of the tree, because those are a nice kind of like viney layer too. So we've been doing a lot with our guilds lately, and as you know, because it's autumn, and planting a lot around our trees and getting things more food foresty around here. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Nice. Sounds like you
Yeah.
guys are having lots of fun and experimenting.
Lots of fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So I ask this of people for the magazine sometimes about becoming certified. Are you looking at becoming maybe Demeter certified, or any certifications you're working towards?
We would love to do that. It is definitely on our list. My dad's kind of a little bit anti-establishment.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he's a little bit, he's just kind of a rebel. And so, you know, the money aspect of it is always something that he questions. We definitely would consider ourselves 100% organic, and you know, we would never ever use anything synthetic, or I mean, we really try to use just what we have on this land, you know, for input. Sometimes we get some carbon from off the land, because that's the one thing that we are lacking here is carbon. We need more deciduous trees and we just need more carbon really, and to make this clay soil what we would like it to be. But yeah, we just kind of weigh what are the you know, why would we get certified, what are the pros, and whenever we do that, there aren't really enough pros to move us in that direction, because we just feel so good with what we're doing already. And
totally.
I mean, I also, you know, I mean, there are so many little certificates that I could get for things that I do, but I just feel like, what's the point? You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, I mean, I guess it's all about money, isn't it? And it would be if we wanted to sell a bulk product somewhere to somebody, and they needed that label. And right now that's not the road we're going down. So, yeah.
Because you're not running a business.
We go to the farmer's market.
Yeah, but to become Demeter certified, or even get the bio grow.
Yeah, we've thought about the bio grow, because that's, I think, a little bit more affordable. But I mean, we should look into it again, but I think it would have to take a really big, like, we're like, whoa, we want to share this with the world. And the only way we can do it is if we get that label on this, you know? So I think it would be something like that. But right now it's, we just go to the market and we have an abundance of stuff. It's a pretty awesome market up here, really almost like third worldy, just super down home and open, and anybody can come and have a stall. And I sell a lot of my flowers. I grow a lot of flowers, so I sell a lot of my flowers there, bouquets and things. And then if we have extra produce, I'll sell that. And I make flower baths, and I make balms and teas. So I sell all those at the market.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess if you're just selling at that scale, getting certified, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm open to conversation about it, definitely. And, you know, we're part of the Biodynamic Society, and I definitely like to support the biodynamics, you know, here and anywhere. I feel really good about supporting it, either through money or just energy, or what, you know, money is energy. But yeah, we just haven't come to that place of really, it just hasn't felt right to do the work towards the certification at this point.
Fair enough. You're doing so many things.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for those who want to develop their knowledge of biodynamics, whether it's just a home gardener or they're wanting to convert their farm, or where should they begin?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that I'm doing a little plug for you here, but I really do think the Biodynamic Association of New Zealand is wonderful. You know, I just think that there's so many good resources. You guys have your little library there, or, you know, nice sized library there that you can borrow books from. And I love the Harvest magazine that comes out, and it's just such a nice way to know what's going on and to connect with other people and feel connected, because you can feel quite isolated when you're doing organics or biodynamics. I know. I have some, you know, I have some great books. I mean, this is my ultimate favorite, Grasp the Nettle. I mean, come on, Peter Proctor, just such a good book.
Yeah.
And then I also love this one, Biodynamic Perspectives, because it's also about like field management, pasture management, and animal husbandry and things, and how to kind of like work with it just like has a lot of different aspects, and it's New Zealand, so that's really great too, because sometimes we're in the southern hemisphere and it can feel also feel isolating. And also just, I mean, I love to just go on to the Kaonga website and look at their moon calendar, and that's a nice resource. I love Kay Baxter, and I love everything she does, and I feel like even though she's not certified by biodynamic, I mean, a lot of the things in biodynamics are working with the moon and the stars, and that's essentially what they're doing too. So I would say don't limit yourself, like just open yourself up to whatever comes in and whatever feels easy for you. And I think if you were going to start, I would just get a little bit of the preparation 500 and 501 and just play around with it in your garden, and like try it on one area and see how it goes, and try it for a couple moon cycles and see do you notice a difference. Touch your soil, touch your plants, see if anything's changing. Another great thing is the Equisetum tea, the horsetail tea. I use that a lot for just general health of plants and fungus and things. And I think that's a nice place to start, because you can just boil up some Equisetum, put it in a little spray jar and put a little soap in it, eco soap. And then you can just spray it on your plants and see, oh, is this helping with I might have a little fungal issue over here, or I might have a little pest issue, and just see because it should really strengthen your plant. And just be a scientist, be like a nerd and just play around and see what happens, And I do think that permaculture is a wonderful resource for if you are on a small piece of land, because you can just grow so much food in the tiniest little piece of land, and you can feed your whole neighborhood. And that is possible. More and more people are showing that. And I think permaculture is, it's essentially, it's pretty much like integrated design systems that model nature. So it's a whole kind of way of thinking around systems. And so if you have a little piece of land and you're able to get all your systems working really well and succinct and tight, and everything's like this little network, then you can, it's amazing what you can do. And I think that's like Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, the people who found permaculture over in Australia. They just have some really good resources and really good for small production. And this is Bill Mollison's book, and it's Introduction to Permaculture, and it's so good. And it has it has such great like little little pictures and
nice.
Little drawings and things. And I just think it's such a good resource if you're just kind of beginning and wondering how to, because when you begin, that's like a beautiful kind of initiation time, because you have the opportunity to build everything up. And because once you build something, it's hard to unbuild it. So it's like that first time of building your compost or building your chicken coop or whatever it is, it's a real gift. And if you do it right, it can be just can be a lifetime of abundance. So that's what I think Bill really can speak to in that book. That's my
that's great advice. I like that. I think sometimes people get a little bit put off with biodynamics and permaculture because it seems like there's lots of rules and dogma and theory behind it. But I feel like if you go on with a bit of a playful nature, have a little bit of a sense of humor still about it. And, the elementals aren't going to come up and bite your hand if you do a 500 wrong, like
no, they won't. They really won't.
It's good to learn how to do things properly, just out of respect for the land and the system and things. Of course, you don't want to be disrespectful, but you've got to be kind to yourself too, and know you're a learner and just give it a go.
That's right. I'd say give it a go. If you're feeling inspired, just go for it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Hey, we're coming to the end of our chat, which I'm really enjoying. Thank you, Rachael. And I thought
Yeah,
maybe
thank you.
we'll just end with, I've just got a question. What are you grateful for in the context of biodynamics and just your amazing life that you have?
Yeah, oh my goodness, so grateful for, I mean, there's just so much, but I have to come back to, my body. Really, I'm grateful for my body and this lifetime, just that my body is this miraculous kind of, just is a miracle, that I can have 3 children, and my body made those 3 children. And I can work on the land, and I can be that bridge between the earth and the stars. And it can heal itself over and over again. And I have all these bacteria and funguses and even viruses living inside me, and I just feel so grateful for this body that I'm in this lifetime. And of course my mind and my spirit as well. And really my mother, my father, my husband, my whole family, but my mother and father, they kind of set me up for success, I would say, in this lifetime, which I'm forever grateful for. And they really just set me free. That was what they did. They just said, here you are, and we'll guide you, but you are free. You are a free human, and you have sovereignty, and you have bodily autonomy, and this is you. And that's just such a gift, because it's just kind of rare. And I am so grateful for the water too. That's another big thing for me, the water. It's just, we are in this place of pure, beautiful water, and that water is life. So, yeah, I think in this, gorgeous, clean, nutrient dense food that fuels this gorgeous body that I was gifted with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really it.
Nice. Hey, well,
Yeah.
thank you again for taking the time to speak to me, and for saying that you'll write a little article for Harvest magazine. I really appreciate it.
I will.
Yeah, so if people want to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we are on Instagram at ipawi.farm, IPUWAI.farm. And kind of on Facebook, would rather not be, and I'm not on there that much. So, but it's the same, and you can message us on there. And we have a website, ipawifarm.co.nz. It's very rustic and needs a lot of work, but it's there. And my email's on there too. So that's a good way to get in touch. Yeah.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. I'll let you get back to your beautiful children. Let your mum get on your appointment.
Yes.
Yeah. So, ka kite anō. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. Bye-bye.